Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk, go to thesparkfile.com/Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell, and we are creativity coaches who help people clarify and accomplish their creative goals.
Know that just by listening to this podcast, you are joining a warm and wonderful clan of creatives.
But hold up, you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File?
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and fascinations. Every episode, we're going to reach into our Spark Files and we're going to exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we may even talk to some folks who spark us too.
And your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to take some of those sparks of inspiration and make something of your own. So without further ado, let's open up
The
Spark
File.
File. Hi, Laura.
Hello, Susan.
Laura, I've got a big, bountiful spark for you today.
I am so ready. I'm so ready for this spark.
Let's just dive straight in.
Okay.
So, as many of you know, our dear friend Gavin Creel passed away recently at the age of 48. Gavin was, to quote Hunter Bell, a special noodle, as evidenced by the outpouring of love towards him.
Ooh,
Yep. We were speaking with Spark Filer, Broadway producer, founder of Ars Nova, Jenny Steingart, and Jenny remarked that she had never seen such an outpouring of love for a member of our community. And it really is a testament to the magnitude of the loss that we are experiencing and a life well lived. I mean,
my gosh,
what a legacy. What a legacy.
The legacy of how many lives he touched.
Yeah. So in addition to being a world-class talent and an extremely gifted teacher, Gavin was an incredibly vibrant person. So it's extremely difficult to imagine that his life in the embodied form of Gavin Creel is done. But I recently learned from Laura Camion's Spark on Grief and Creativity that I could use my creativity to process this profound loss.
Yes.
Now, I am, according to Maida Wagner's 5 creative types, hi Maida, I am what we would call a sensitive soul. I use writing and sharing to order my lived experience, to get my arms around it, to see what shape it takes, to see what meaning I want to ascribe to it, and then hopefully ultimately to be of service to others who may be going through it. So what I decided to make of it was this podcast episode. And I may make something else out of this in the future. But right now, first draft, it's going to take the form of this podcast episode.
And what a gift to us. What a gift to all of us, Suze.
Fingers crossed. So I want to dedicate this episode to the people who loved and lost Gavin, especially those folks who cared for him in his final days. Laura, you know my favorite quote of all time from our homeboy Ram Dass. We are all just walking each other home.
Mhm.
So I want to dedicate this, and I want to thank those who walked Gavin home. For this episode, in addition to contacting some folks who knew Gavin directly, I put out a call on social media that read, "Along with so many, I am grieving the loss of our beloved Gavin Creel. On the advice of the wise Laura Camion, I am processing my grief using my creativity, putting together an episode of our podcast, sharing some of the sparks of wisdom I learned from Gavin over the years. For example, I learned the concept of hold on tightly, let go lightly from Gavin, which I think he was talking to a lot of performers about really committing to something, but when it's time to let it go, let it go.
Mhm.
But it's actually a great lesson to lean on now as I
Mm.
process his transition from human light into actual light. I asked the people of social media, did you learn something from Gavin in a rehearsal hall, a classroom, a boardroom, a theater, or in a lake? Did you learn something at a stage door or a party or on a street corner or a rooftop? I asked them to please leave a comment or direct message with any Gavin wisdom that they'd be willing to share with me and thus all of you podcast listeners. And I said that they could remain anonymous or I could cite my source. I
Mm.
concluded by saying, thanks to everyone for sharing your stories, pictures, and videos about Gavin. It's the next best thing to having more time with them.
Mm.
So, friend of the pod, in one of Gavin's friends and collaborators, Angela Johnson, commented and said, "You're right, Susan. He transitioned from human light to actual light.
That's right.
It's really hard. Can't say I'm processing it the best. I'm really sad. I'm
Mm.
trying." So I had just watched the recording of a special class that Gavin had done with our Illume group
Mm.
just at the end of 2023. So I wrote back, "My sweet Angela Johnson, I think we have to ask ourselves, WWGD." And you know what I think he'd say? Breathe and be present to all of it. Don't race to skip over the hard parts. And Angela wrote back, WWGD. Amen. Here's to eternal love.
Mm.
So I'm entitling this episode of the podcast WWGD, short for What Would Gavin Do? And I'm just going to share some of the wisdom that we collectively absorbed from Gavin Creel as a performer, a teacher, a human.
Ugh.
Essentially, I just want to explore what made that noodle so special. And I share all of this with the caveat that Gavin was a whole dimensional person who contained multitudes.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to be scratching the surface today. And also, I couldn't include everything that everyone shared because it was just like an avalanche of love. But I am so grateful to everyone who reached back. So, shall we get into it?
What a gift. Susan, I just want to say, like, your process of healing is helping others heal, and I'm here for it. It's just such a beautiful thing. I'm grateful to be part of it.
Thanks, Laura Camion. And I hope that this helps, whether that's your healing or your growth. I really do believe
Yeah.
that's what Gavin would have wanted.
Yep.
So a few themes really began to emerge. The first being present. Juliet Gray, who worked closely with Gavin at the Performing Arts Project, shared, "What I learned from Gavin over our years together was to be present in the moment. He had a genuine way of making people feel seen. When he spoke to you, it felt as if you were the only person in the room. Nothing else mattered. He was so curious about life and learning, so open, and always striving to improve himself so he could give more to his fellow humans."
Mm.
Jared Marshett Gertner, who co-starred with Gavin in Book of Mormon on the first national tour and London's West End, shared, "Anyone who ever met Gav knew that when he would talk to you, he would make you feel like you were the only two people in the world. This was one of his many gifts." And Laura, you can attest, like
Yeah.
that Gavin Creel present.
Willing to go deep with you, see you, and I think you're going to get into more of this, but it was for anyone and everyone. It
Yeah.
didn't feel
Yep.
like
We are going to
it
get
was
into that.
reserved for specials. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Specials. We call them specials. I think Tina Fey made that up. I love that.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. I feel that Gavin's presentness was coupled with his curiosity.
Yes.
Juliet Gray, again from the Performing Arts Project, said, I saw him lean into people from all walks of life, giving so generously of his time and space, asking questions about their lives, offering ways to help them with whatever they were facing, sometimes even moments before he had to teach, catch a flight, face a crowd, or even perform. He truly, authentically cared so deeply about others. So there's something about that presentness coupled with that curiosity that I think was a real, it really was part of that Gavin Creel recipe.
Oof. Yep.
Now, I want to share some things that people shared about being an artist, being a performer. Here's some wisdom that people collected from Gavin on that topic. Sabrina, it's either Mangone. Sabrina, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name, but Sabrina shared, during one of the classes I took with him, he said, find your ideas in the sky. There's nothing interesting on the floor. Sabrina says, I still think about that all the time. And I was like, what great advice for a performer.
Great.
Find your ideas in the sky. There ain't nothing interesting on the floor. Kate Herlihy, who attended TPAP, shared something she learned from Gavin. Great art is made in a mess. A lotus blooms in mud. Which we love. Which we love.
Come on.
Macy Mateer shared something Gavin shared across a cafeteria table at the Performing Arts Project. The safest place to be is all the way in.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Buckle up, everybody. They only get
These
richer.
are gems.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah Drebin shared that she was present in a class that Gavin taught on auditioning. And Gavin said, auditioning should be approached like throwing a party. Own the room and warmly make those in the room feel welcome, comfortable, and relaxed as if they're your guests. Sarah said, I apply that to any performance. 15 years later, I still have a ritual to be reminded to throw a party every single time I perform. I thought that was brilliant. The beautiful Molly Hager, Broadway's Molly Hager, said, during a conversation about mutual feelings of imposter syndrome, Gavin texted, this is happening to exactly the right person, you, and you don't have to pay for it. It is yours and you can hold it fully with deserving ownership. Molly said, I try to remember that anytime I'm not feeling worthy. It goes along with something else he used to say, which was, if it's meant for you, you can't miss it.
Yes.
And this is something I heard from several people. Heidi Blickenstaff shared that Gavin had said to her, if it's meant for you, you can't miss it. He also said, took her by the shoulders and said, you're Heidi motherfucking Blickenstaff. Yes. And she said, sometimes she's like, even I can't fully embody it, but I almost believed it when Gavin said it to me. Kevin Forrestal shared that Gavin had taught him that it's okay to want something badly enough to feel hurt when it doesn't happen for you. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so fucking rad. It's okay to want something badly enough to feel hurt when it doesn't happen for you, but that you can't miss what's meant for you. Thank you for that, Kevin.
Oh, this is great.
Kara Pacone said, he came to NYU while I was there to do a masterclass, and it honestly just felt like he was hanging out with us more than anything. But he introduced me/us to the phrase, other people's successes are not your failures. And he taught us about putting blinders on to not compare ourselves to others.
Yes.
Holly Kelly shared, Gavin's number one piece of advice to students was go to therapy. He is the reason I pursued finding a therapist.
Yes.
And now I'd like to share something from the wonderful Broadway film television actor Susie Meisner. Susie Meisner shared this.
I heard Julia Armand say one time that she does not act for the camera, she acts for the universe. And I think that's really applicable for Gav, deeply so, because I think he was always in search of something bigger than himself. When he would collaborate, he would model like what it is to dig deep inside of yourself and wrestle with the darkest parts of yourself and get curious about them, and then push the boundaries of who you think you are and inspire his collaborators to do the same so that he could, meet them in the middle and make something bigger than both of them. And he did the same with his students. There was no one better than meeting a student where they were and saying, I see you, and yes, and what's more, how much more of you is there, so that we can making something so big that it would be for the universe. Because I do think that was deeply important to Gav. And he did it for his friends too, whether that was through humor or a lot of humor, or silence, or connecting in nature, or cooking. He was constantly looking for that cord that connected us to the largest parts of ourselves. And then he had the courage to share it. And I think that is an extraordinary thing. So that's one thing that I learned, and I will continue to carry forevermore. A person who did not miss it and lived so profoundly consciously. All right, I love you, girl.
Now I'd like to talk about how Gavin lived and modeled showing up for others. Now, I told you how I let Gavin know I was doing that musical and that I was doing my best with the singing. And he wrote back this beautiful, beautiful email about my singing. And I was like, Gavin, I'm going to tape that to my dressing room mirror. And like 3 days later, there was a lifetime supply of Scotch tape on my doorstep.
I love that story. I love it.
I want to share a few more stories. Julie Garnier shared a story about how she'd been in New York for about a year, and Seth Rudetsky had asked her to be in the ensemble of an Actors Fund benefit for the concert of Hair. It was a one-night only benefit. They did it at the beautiful New Amsterdam Theater, and the cast was incredible. Idina Menzel, Raul Esparza, Gavin was in it, RuPaul was in it.
Wow.
And Idina had just won the Tony for playing Elphaba, and Idina was meant to be singing the 11 o'clock number, which was the number Walking in Space. And the ensemble was going to be singing behind her, and the dance ensemble was going to be taking off their clothes while being lowered into the pit on a hydraulic lift. I mean, it was going to be like a big smoke and production number. Yeah. So a couple days before they were going to do it, Seth asked if Julie wouldn't mind just taking a look at the song, because Idina hadn't shown up to any of the rehearsals yet because she was shooting a TV show. She's not a flake. She was shooting a TV show. Yep. She was very busy. Yep. And so she didn't come to any of the rehearsals. And so Seth was like, just take a look at it in case she gets stuck on set. And Julie was like, it's not going to happen. And they had the orchestra rehearsal that afternoon. Julie didn't sing it with the orchestra at the rehearsal, kind of glanced at it. She was like, it's going to be fine. She'll be here by the evening. And then Julie went out to dinner with a few people, came back to the theater, and Seth and the choreographer, Christopher Gattelli, came running up to her, and they were like, you're going on. She's not coming. You're going on. And Julie had to learn the song and had to take a little break to have a panic attack. So Julie's having this panic attack. They get through the first act. She gets backstage. She's kind of losing her mind, and she was really freaking out. And Gavin and Annie Golden and Raul came up to her and were trying to calm her down, ease her nerves. And she was fucking freaked out. And Gavin was like, you're going to be okay. And he's like, let's run. And she was like, what? And he was like, let's run. and they ran up and down the stairs, flights and flights of stairs in this Broadway theater until Julie was like knocked out of her panic attack. She was laughing, and essentially Gavin had helped her to get out of her own way.
Yes.
So there he is with that twinkle in his eye. She's out of breath, feeling 1,000 times better. And he was like, see, you just had to get out of your own way. Julie said, I was a no-name. I didn't even have an agent. I had nothing. And this is something I have taken with me throughout my entire career, getting out of your own way and just living in it.
Wow.
Thank you for that story, Julie.
Oh,
Here's another story about showing up for others, courtesy of Beanie Feldstein.
Hi, Susan. It's Beanie. I hope you can hear me. I'm on the streets of Midtown. I think Gavin taught me every second of every day. He was a pillar in our community, in our company, in my heart, in my life. But the thing that comes to mind most with Gavin, I think, is really fucking showing up for people in action. Our first couple weeks of rehearsal, I'd had a really tough day. Just felt very beaten down and like I didn't know if I could do it. And Gavin could clearly see that. I didn't say anything, but he could feel it because he was so intuitive. And he came up to me, he grabbed my hand. He said, I'm walking you home. Where do you live? I'm walking you home. And he walked me all the way home. And in that time, we had a conversation that I will cherish every minute of my life. But it was the being unafraid to see that someone needs something and just jumping in. I think so often in grief, in life, in pain, and in all of it, we're afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to do the wrong thing, and then it just leads to inaction. And Gav was the opposite of that. He always jumped in. He always sought out to help someone. And he wasn't afraid to just try to help. And he always succeeded. But I think in this life, we're often so afraid of doing the wrong thing that we just don't do anything. And I am hoping and trying and pleading to carry his unbelievable intuition of when to help people for the rest of my life.
All right. Here's another piece of the Gavin Creel recipe that I think is really important, that activism. Let's talk about that activism.
wow. Yeah.
So Paul Oakley Stovall wrote, here's what I learned from Gavin. I was guest editor at large on the premiere issue of a short-lived magazine. It was a monumental task, and I made sure everyone around me knew how hard I was working and how important this work was. Laughing, crying emojis, laughing, crying emojis. The issue of being an out actor was in the news a lot in those days. Would it kill your career? Would you be able to believably play a straight character? So I got the idea to do a cheeky photo shoot with out actors in iconically heteronormative theater roles. We needed a Stanley Kowalski from Streetcar. Gavin had recently come out professionally, and I went after him, and he did it. What he also did when he showed up to the photo shoot was quietly and simply disarm me with his preparedness, kindness, and humor. He taught me that your activism can be quiet and powerful. Get to the point and keep it moving. Don't shine a light on what you're doing. Just do it. And for God's sakes, have fun. Jen Waldman, the great New York acting teacher and activist, shared, one thing I learned from Gavin, nothing's a problem and everything is possible. So Gavin, along with Rory O'Malley and Jenny Canilos, had just started Broadway Impact, fighting for marriage equality.
Yes.
And they were partnering with Jen Waldman's group called For Good Productions on this giant benefit. It was a massive undertaking at the Gershwin Theater with 300 performers on stage. And Jen said Gavin was calmness amidst the chaos, and his whole vibe was nothing's a problem, everything is possible. So consider tucking that into your
I
activism.
love that. Oh,
Another, I think, really, really, really important part of Gavin and his wisdom is these are my words, but he really embodied a no one is above me, no one is below me approach to people,
yep.
a non hierarchical approach to people. Again, Jared Marshak Gertner said, Gavin and I led the first national company and London company of the Book of Mormon. I say led the company because that is what I learned from him, how to truly lead. He walked around the building before every performance to make sure he connected with everyone before the show started. He brought only positive energy to the building every day. He made sure that everyone in the building felt seen and respected. Gav would check in with the front of house staff, the crew, with management, with musicians, and he brought me along for all of this, letting me lead with him, guiding the way for me so that I could become a better version of myself and the co-leader that the company needed, unselfishly sharing the spotlight and the love. I will never be okay with him being gone, but I carry him with me in everything I do.
Gosh, that relates back to that first one of like being so so many of these I see this theme of like being so present for other people that
Yeah.
you're not making everything about yourself.
Laura, yes.
You know, the star of the show, everyone, you can operate as though, guess what? I'm here now. The show can go on because I'm the most important person in the space. And he behaved the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mariah Grande co-signs on this. Mariah Grande, great performer, great vocalist, great member of the Spark File. Mariah toured with Gavin in Into the Woods, and she shared something we bonded over. It was important to both of us to learn everybody's name on every show that we did, not just the cast, not just the creative team, every single member of the crew. And Gavin also did that in every touring house that we were in. Gavin made a point of learning everybody's name and referring to them by name as often as possible. It's such a small kindness, but it is so humane and affirming. And that's one thing that we shared, that sense of everybody is worth having their name said to them correctly.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for that, Mariah.
Yes.
Another really, really important part of Gavin was his playfulness. Deborah Craig described Gavin as a hot golden retriever puppy, just full of zest and life, a little wild. And he was really, really playful. Kate Baldwin shared these words.
Gavin and I had an agreement during Hello Dolly that if either of us couldn't sing anymore, either because we lost our lyrics or failed to make an entrance or got sick, that we would have each other's back and we would say the words or sing for our partner, our other person. And lo and behold, that happened. During our only duet at the end of the show called It Only Takes a Moment, which is such a beautiful, beautiful song. During one matinee, my voice just decided to leave, and he sang both his part and my part while I just stood there holding his hands and leaking out of my downstage eye. I just started crying, and then gently he just brushed the tear away from my face. I was pretending I wasn't sick, but I was really sick and sort of powering through, and he knew. And I went home after the show, and my understudy, lovely Annalisa Lemming, went on for the evening show. But that moment of him just looking at me, understanding and nodding and saying, I got you, and just miraculously somehow singing both parts. I don't know how he did it, but he did. He sang both parts. And then treating me with such delicate kindness in that moment. And not being scared and just being brave and saying and holding my hand. Amazing. Then there was another moment where something similar could have happened, and yet it didn't. When Bernadette Peters came into the show as a replacement for Bette Midler, we had rehearsals with her, and then a put-in, and then, which feels odd to say that you put Bernadette Peters into the show, which is weird. But when we got to our very first performance, I sort of had an out-of-body experience because Bernadette Peters is the person that I grew up listening to and loving. And so all of a sudden, my spirit left my body because I realized I was on stage with my childhood idol, and I froze. And there was a bit of blocking where she put her hands on my shoulders, she turned me toward Gavin, and I was to sing my line in Dancing, the song Dancing. And I forgot my words because Bernadette Peters had touched me on the shoulders. It sounds lame, but I hope you can relate. So I sang gibberish. I went, and his eyebrows went into his hairline. The ray of joy that came out of his face because I was going up was infectious, and we both started giggling so hard, and he did not honor our agreement and come in with my words because he was laughing too hard at me. We all laughed. We all laughed. I love ya. Okay, thanks, Susan. Bye.
Thank you so much for that, Kate. When we're talking about Gavin Creel, we're talking about Gavin Creel's wisdom. We have to talk about the power of self-acceptance. Luke Witt wrote, "When I was in my teen years and struggling with my sexuality and thinking I would have to hide that part of myself to ever be a professional performer, seeing someone like Gavin live so authentically and proudly of who he was showed me it was okay to be proud of who I was and to love myself. I sadly never got to meet him or see him perform live, but he still taught me about love.
Wow.
And I know I'm not alone in this. The last 24 hours, I have seen so many other queer and gay performers posting the same thing." Luke, I know that's right. Thank you for sharing that. And just to co-sign on it, Jonathan Groff texted me this. "Gavin taught me the life-changing power of opening up your heart to love. A romantic relationship changed the course of my life forever. Even though I had come out as gay to my friends and my family in 2008, I still felt deep shame. I had worshiped him for years as a performer, but when I got to know him as a person in 2009, and the channel of love opened up between us, he gave me the gift of an all-consuming passion, and my soul bloomed. Public displays of affection used to make my whole body tense, and suddenly I was all over Gavin on street corners without giving it a second thought. Films, poetry, music, art, all of it came into focus. But it was his activism that shook me to the core. He monologued with such purity and honesty about equality, rooted in his own struggles with his identity. He organized the Broadway Impact trip to the Marriage Equality March in DC. I will never forget a specific moment of looking over at his shining face with the purity of his heart beaming out of his eyes. The powerful light he radiated completely possessed me and snapped me into evolution. I turned from looking at him and immediately came out of the closet publicly. The tidal wave of his passion for love burst my heart open permanently, and I have never been the same."
Wow.
How about that?
I
How about
can't.
them apples?
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Here's a different take on that power of acceptance that Gavin embodied. Heather Mieko Lackey shared, "In October of 2023, our musical theater class of 1998 had our 25th reunion in Ann Arbor, Michigan. 15 of the 20 from our graduating class were able to go to our reunion. Gavin was a driving force in keeping us all together. At our last reunion, Gavin and I were talking about aging. It's something I've really been having a hard time with. My physical appearance is something I've struggled with my whole life, and getting older and saggier and wrinklier does not help. He told me he had decided to stop comparing himself to his 25-year-old self, and that when he looks in the mirror each day, he says, Looking good, kid. In December, I was texting with him and I said, your words about feeling good about yourself really stuck with me and not comparing ourselves with our 25-year-old selves. And he wrote back, let her go.
Oh.
This is the one that matters now.
Yeah.
Those few words had such a profound impact on me. Since I posted this on Facebook, I've gotten calls, texts, and comments on the post about how his kind words helped them too. I hope we can all look in the mirror and say, looking good, kid.
Oh. Oh.
Love that.
Mhm.
And I'm so thankful for Heather sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And while we're talking about loving ourselves, let's talk about love. This is an anonymous share. I got to know Gav when he got his lake house in 2019. I was having a really hard time in a relationship, and Gavin used to sit with me in his kitchen and listen to me talk through what was happening, sometimes for hours. He would make us Midwestern medicine, which is a tin roof sundae that his mom made for him growing up. Ice cream, chocolate sauce, and dry roasted peanuts. It's one of my favorites. One day, he said something that changed my life. Love is not a feeling, love is a doing. He had learned that being loved by someone is the things they do for you, to you, around you, not a feeling they say that they have. And loving someone back is a behavior. It now guided all of his relationships and helped me guide mine. I'm so struck how Gavin clearly meant what he said. He was generous and nurtured so many. He actively loved them, and they felt that.
Oh.
And more on the topic of love from the co-founder of the Performing Arts Project, Jonathan Bernstein.
The thing that I take almost above all else from Gavin is his brazen willingness to embrace, full stop, to embrace literally, to actually, he was a very tactile guy. And I think in a lot of ways he taught me how to hug, like just really hug and touch and greet and say goodbye. Those were important things to him. And he did them with a lot of vigor. And in so doing, he had a kind of very monumental wingspan. And I mean that literally, actually. He had incredibly long arms and fingers, and he just sort of, often was seen to be stretched out, embracing East and West in such gloriously unself-conscious ways. And I hope that among the many things that I've learned from him is the necessity of moving your elbows away from your rib cage. And my elbows can often be found tethered to my rib cage. But knowing him, I would think that they are more seldom to be found where they used to be. And I'm able to reach out.
Thank you for those words, Jonathan. Here's a few words from a friend of the podcast on the topic of gratitude, which I think was another one of the dimensions of Gavin Creel. Take it away, Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Hi, Susan. It's Lynn. When I look back on my text messages with Gavin over the years, stretching back as far as my text messages go, what I see over and over again is gratitude. I don't think there's an unkind word in the entire text thread going back a decade when we first met, when he was on Hair with so many good friends of ours like Groff and KO and Swenson. And he never failed to take a moment to remind me how grateful I should be and we should be for actually getting to do the thing we love for a living. One of my favorite, he would always send me, anytime he saw anyone singing Hamilton, he would send it to me. Or anything I was doing. I'm going to send you a video of him. He was walking by a school and heard these kids singing my shot. And first is the video of him just freaking out that it's happening. And then is a video of him being like,
What's your name? I'm going to send this to Lynn. Lynn's a friend of mine. Really? Yeah, I promise. I just took a video of you guys. Tell me your name.
I'm Harrison.
I'm Isabella.
I'm just walking down the street, Lynn, and you just get out of school today?
Yeah.
And they're fucking singing Hamilton. You're changing the world, man.
like, say hi. I'll send this video to him. And them freaking out. And him going, you're changing the world, man. Because he just kind of was generosity and collaboration personified. That is totally the kind of adventure that would just take him on a detour through his day, a text to a friend, and let me freak these kids out and let them know that their dreams are a lot closer than they think they are. So I will try to take that gratitude with me, even though I will miss him every day of my life, like the rest of us. Love you.
Thank you for that, Lynn. A few last gems of wisdom from Gavin. Jordan wrote, "Hi, Susan. I'm from Australia, but was living in London when Hair was playing. Gavin did some side gigs in London, and the first was his solo show, but the whole Hair cast were there. It sold out, so Gav and the cast did a mini show outside for those who missed out. At one stage, he asked the crowd to close our eyes for just 10 seconds to give something back to the universe and bless those we love. I've been trying to do that a lot this week. Thanks, Jordan." Thank you for that, Jordan. Taylor Trench, whom Gavin co-starred with in Hello, Dolly, wrote, "What did I learn from Gavin? My gosh, so many things. The importance of seeking joy and creating a little stockpile of it in your heart, because pain comes for all of us, and it's easier to face when you're prepared with an antidote. That and the power of a perfectly timed fart." Thank you for that, Taylor.
Oh, gosh.
In conclusion, speaking with the great acting teacher, Jen Waldman, Jen shared that her students were grieving that they'd never have the opportunity to work with Gavin. And because I was in the midst of preparing for this episode and I've been soaking in the glory of Gavin Creel, I said, that's true. They may not have directly intersected with Gavin or ever have the chance to work with him or ever have the chance to sing with him. But if they did want to get closer to the Gavin of it all, they can embody all of those qualities that made him so remarkable: his kindness, his curiosity, his gratitude, his nobody is above me, nobody is below me, his warmth, his playfulness, his intelligence, his lifelong learning. We can embody all of those elements, and we can be that for ourselves. And I think we can be that for each other. And that is my spark.
Yeah. Susie B.
Thank you, Laura.
That was beautiful. I'm just really grateful that you put that call out and you gave everyone the opportunity to tell their stories, and to everyone who did send in their stories to you, so that we could all take part and all, continue to learn from Gavin. It means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have many regrets in life, but one of my regrets is that for years, literally years, I've been talking with Gavin about making something together. And I mean, it's throughout all of our emails with each other. I remember so clearly when we went to see Hello, Dolly, being backstage with Gavin and Taylor Trench and being like, hey, would you guys want to do something? And they were like, name it and when. And one of my regrets is that way leads to way, and we were busy with our own projects and lives, and I lost that opportunity. But even in my regret, I'm like, WWGD, what would Gavin do?
That's right.
And so I got some work to do on that. Yeah.
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So friends,
Yes.
that's it. This episode of The Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape and the Mohican people. And as always, we hope that it put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or you'd like to learn more about how to coach with us to accomplish your creative goals, you can email us at getcreative@thesparkfile.com or reach us through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you need to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File, and we hope that you'll subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. It really, really helps other listeners to find us. Also, if you liked this podcast, if you think it would be of service to others, if you think it would be healing to others, we hope that you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, I don't even know what to say to you. Life is too short.
Yeah, baby. On the other hand, if something lights you up and you are inspired by the wisdom of Gavin Creel, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take that spark and fan it into a flame.
You know, you got to take it
and make it.
Take it away, Gavin.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
That's the one.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk, go to thesparkfile.com/Illume.